The LA Kings say goodbye to a player from their roster and make 8 more picks in the 2025 NHL Draft, plus part 2 of our weekly fan feedback show, all coming up on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also one of the co-hosts of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 19 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We have a very busy show for you, so let's not waste any time. We will start with Ken Holland's first trade as Kings general manager. Defenseman Jordan Spence was sent to the Ottawa Senators for pick number 67 overall in the third round of this year's draft and a sixth-round pick in 2026. Obviously, not surprised that Jordan Spence was traded. We've talked about how that was a distinct possibility. I am surprised at the return. I thought that if Spence were to be traded, it would be part of a package that would also include an NHL caliber player coming back to the LA Kings. The combination of Spence and some picks perhaps to bring back a player, but that wasn't what happened. So I have to say I am disappointed in Ken Holland's first trade. And I will admit I've always been a bit of a Jordan Spence fan. But as I've said, if this coaching staff, for whatever reason, isn't going to trust Jordan Spence to play in playoff games, then they need to go out and get somebody that they do trust, because there is a role for even a bottom pairing defender to at least be someone you can put on the ice, so it's not just playing with 5 or 4 defensemen in a playoff series. So if the Kings go out and do that and they make themselves better, great. But like I said, this first move isn't a great move in my opinion. Especially Jordan Spence was a guy that was drafted and developed by the Kings, was a young guy who did, I think, everything that was asked of him. I would love to get kind of a definitive explanation as to why they didn't feel like, I guess, he was an NHL player or a player that fit on their roster. I think he's an NHL player, but I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that I think Jordan Spence was somehow the key to the Kings having playoff success or winning a Stanley Cup. I think he's very replaceable, but at the same time, he was young, he was cheap, he was a right shot defenseman, and I think those guys are in demand. I know he was undersized and not the most physical guy in the world. And if the Kings want to get bigger and stronger at that position, okay. But again, I just thought that they would have used Jordan Spence if they were going to trade him in a way to get somebody that would fill his position or another position maybe. So the Kings now looks like they'll have 2 holes to fill in their blue line. They got to replace Jordan Spence, because there is not a replacement within the organization for him at this point. And also, Vladislav Gavrikov is likely going to go. Ken Holland, or he's going to test free agency and likely will sign with another team. Ken Holland made some comments after the Kings wrapped up the draft. We're going to get much more deeper into those comments in our next show because we've got so much to do today. But real quick, Ken Holland said basically that Jordan Spence wanted to be moved, so he sort of did ask for a trade, and they accommodated him. And he also said, as far as Vladislav Gavrikov, that he believes it looks like at this point that Gavrikov is going to test free agency. But Jordan Spence is now no longer a member of the LA Kings. Wish him well in Ottawa, and we'll see where the Kings go from here to replace him. And there's going to be a lot of moves that are going to need to be made at this point to shore up the blue line. Meanwhile, the Kings made 8 selections on day 2 of the NHL draft here in Los Angeles. We're going to give you the details and a quick note on each player. And we start with the Kings' second round pick, the 59th overall selection. The Kings made a trade with the Pittsburgh Penguins during round 1 to acquire this pick. And with the 59th selection, their only pick in the second round, the Kings selected Wojtek Chihars. He's a left shot, left winger, 6 foot, 175 pounds. He's out of Czechia. Chihars played in both the 2025 World Junior Championships and the 2025 Under 18 World Championships. In the World Juniors, he had a goal and 2 points while averaging nearly 7 minutes a game, helping Czechia capture a bronze medal. He had 3 points in 5 games in the Under 18 World Championship. Chihars is described as an all-around forward who can play well in any situation and in any position. He was called a Swiss Army knife type of player, a player that teams love to have on their roster. Elite Prospects said about Wojtek Chihars, he's a relentless winger who brings two-way value through his details. He competes and grinds on the forecheck, powers down on the forecheck to force dump-ins, completes his off-puck routes, and facilitates others with his movements and energy, end quote. So again, that was left winger Wojtek Chihars, the second-round pick of the LA Kings this NHL draft. The Kings had a second pick in round number 2, the 67th pick. They would end up getting that in the Jordan Spence trade, but then the Kings traded that pick to the Carolina Hurricanes for the 125th pick, a 4th-round pick in this year's draft, and a 3rd-round pick in 2026. With the Kings' 3rd pick, 88th selection overall in the NHL draft, LA selected Christian Epperson, a 5'11", 180-pound forward, born in America, born in Wisconsin. He played for the Saginaw Spirit last season, put up some solid numbers in his first year of junior hockey with 27 goals and 53 assists for 80 points. He will now be going to the University of Denver for next season, and keep that in mind when it comes to another Kings prospect as well. As far as what Elite Prospects had to say about Christian Epperson, quote, a forechecking machine. Epperson hunts the puck at every turn, displays relentless energy, and landing some resounding hits. He stick lifts, steals possessions, protects it, and funnels pucks to the slot, setting up shots all around it, end quote. Again, that was left winger Christian Epperson. With the Kings' 4th-round selection, the 120th pick overall, the Kings picked up defenseman Caden Harrington. He is a 6'2", 205-pound right shot defenseman, born in America. He is from Vermont, played for the Lincoln Stars in the U.S. Hockey League. He's 19 years old. He'll be attending the University of Vermont this coming season. Elite Prospects had to say about Caden Harrington, quote, when Harrington steps on the ice, everything flows through him. He fluidly works laterally across the blue line, waiting for lanes to open up, and dives off the point to collect rebounds and gets open for catch and release passes. He starts a lot of passing plays and exchanges at the point, creating advantages for his forwards in the process. That is defenseman Caden Harrington, the Kings' 4th-round pick in the draft. The Kings had a second 4th-round pick, the number 25 selection overall, acquired from the Carolina Hurricanes, and they would use that pick to select a forward, Jimmy Lombardi. He's 6 foot, 175 pounds, a left shot, Canadian, born in Toronto. He is not related to former Kings general manager Dean Lombardi. Elite Prospects had to say about Jimmy Lombardi, quote, it's hard not to get drawn to Jimmy Lombardi's skill. Carrying the puck in the neutral zone, he shifts it all around poke checks before slipping it to teammates or firing it to the top of the net without any windup. He's capable of catching and distributing passes between his legs behind his back, and does it by keeping his gaze fixed on defenders, adding deception to his play. That is Jimmy Lombardi. He was the Kings' second 4th-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. As far as the Kings' 5th-round pick, the 152nd selection overall, the Kings went with a goaltender, Petteri Rimpinen, 6 foot, 175 pounds, another 19-year-old. He's from Finland. And I have to be honest, the one position I did not expect the Kings to go for was goaltender, but certainly stacked in net right now are the LA Kings. As far as Rimpinen played well for Finland as their starting goalie in the World Junior Championships. They lost to the U.S. in the gold medal game to his now teammate, I guess you would say, or fellow teammate in the organization, Hampton Slakinski. So the LA Kings now have the starting goalie for the U.S., Hampton Slakinski, the starting goalie for Finland, Petteri Rimpinen, and the starting goalie for Canada, Carter George, in the World Junior Championships this past year, and likely will all be the starting goalies in the World Junior Championships coming up this year as well. As far as what elite prospects had to say about Petteri Rimpinen, quote, Rimpinen relies more on his athleticism than his pure dynamic skating. He battles well through traffic, and his tracking doesn't fall off when chaos erupts. Up next with the 6th round pick, the LA Kings, the 148th overall pick, the Kings went with center Jan Hoven. It is spelled with a C, but it's pronounced Hoven. He's 6'2", 185-pound, 18-year-old, born in Slovakia, that's right, Slovakia. Sometimes Slovakia and Czechia get confused with me. However, he did play in Finland this past year. His father of the same name was once upon a time a goaltender and was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs back in the day, but his dad, also Jan Hoven, never made it to the NHL. As for what elite prospects said about Hoven, quote, he is at his best as more of a supportive two-way forward, capable of playing both in the center and wing positions, solid defensively, and committed to giving a quality effort without the puck, using his 6'2" frame and the length to provide an assist. This is true on the forecheck as he reads defenders' intentions and intercepts their breakouts, end quote. So that was the Kings' 6th round pick, center Jan Hoven. With the first of the Kings' 2 7th round picks, they went with Braden McMorrow. He was the 196th overall pick, 6 foot 175, another 19-year-old American born out of Minnesota. He'll be attending the University of Denver next season as well. So that's, I believe, 4 Kings prospects playing for the Denver Pioneers next season. You've got McMorrow, you've got Kristen Eppersons, Jared Wright, and James Reeder as well. I think they're both still there. Elite prospects said about Brandon McMorrow, quote, direct best describes McMorrow's game. He launches himself into battles and always takes the extra stride to secure possessions. Once recovering the puck, he immediately knows the next play, whether he's cutting across the net for a chance or spinning a backhand pass into the slot for a one-timer. That was the Kings' first 7th round pick, Braden McMorrow. And with the Kings' final selection, their 8th pick of the day, the 216th overall pick, and their 2nd pick in round number 7. The Kings go with defenseman Will Sharp. He's 6 foot, 195-pound Canadian born out of British Columbia. Elite prospects said about Will Sharp, quote, known for his strong puck-moving skills and skating ability, but with some inconsistencies in his defensive game. He is a high-risk, high-reward prospect with potential as a top 4 defenseman if he can refine his defensive game. So that was a busy day 2 at the NHL Draft for the LA Kings. 9 overall picks. That was the most the Kings have had in a single draft since 2019. 5 of them were forwards, 3 were defensemen, and there was a goalie. 6 of the 9 players were North American players, 3 were European. Of the 9, 5 of them were 18 years old, and 4 of them were 19 years old. So a productive draft for the LA Kings in 2025 here in Los Angeles. All right, up next, Kings fans submitted their ideas for some trades. But you know what they say about the best laid plans. We'll talk about that next here on Locked In LA Kings, your team every day. Have you decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. It's exactly where Gametime can come in and help you out. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, and even invite a bigger group to come with you to the ballpark. Gametime can make it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And we've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming baseball game with the Dodgers or Angels. Gametime has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matches. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's get to the feedback portion of the show. We'll get right into it. This is from Jeremy in Ventura. He says, thanks for all you do for Kings fans. Love the show. What do you think about a sign and trade with Toronto, with LA getting Mitch Marner, who then gets an 8-year deal, maybe at $10 or $11 million instead of 13 or 14 because he's getting the extra 8-year deal. And Toronto gets Spence, Turcotte, and draft compensation. Go Kings, go. That was Jeremy in Ventura. Well, you may or may not heard about this report on Saturday, but well, first of all, Jordan Spence is gone, so he couldn't be included in any kind of trade like that. But the Vegas Golden Knights and Toronto Maple Leafs are reportedly ironing out a deal for the rights for Mitch Marner. That would mean Vegas would have an exclusive window to negotiate with Marner before he can talk to anyone else between the time that the deal is finalized, if it is, and Tuesday. And I'm guessing Vegas wouldn't be doing this unless they felt very strongly that they would have a good chance of closing the deal with Mitch Marner. So it hasn't been finalized as of the recording of this show, but we'll see. I have said all along, I think Marner ends up in Vegas, and it looks like it's heading in that direction. And look, even though Vladislav Gavrikov has not completely come out and said 100% that he's going to test free agency, Ken Holland again said he believes that's going to happen. So if the Kings are in that situation, they might want to consider doing something like this as well with Vladislav Gavrikov. If they don't think that they can re-sign him, then see if you can get some compensation for him to negotiate with another team. Tommy in Manhattan Beach says, I have to slightly disagree with you on the value of replenishing the prospect pool. Hiring Ken Holland signals to me that trading picks is likely to happen. The goal is to contend now, but avoid getting too old in the process. In this week's trade offseason plan, I did keep more mock draft capital for this year, but I did send out future picks and trade back this year to collect multiple second and third round picks. Here we go. And again, this was sent by Tommy in Manhattan Beach before the draft went down. So he says, sign Gavrikov to a 8-year deal, $7 million per season. First 5 years are a full no movement clause, but switch to a modified clause after the last 3. I have faith he'll be great for a few years with the cap going up, and being able to trade him in year 6. I would sign him to this contract. Marner, $13 million a year for 4 years, full no movement clause. Obviously, doesn't look like that's going to happen. He also says LaFerriere, $3.5 million for a 3-year deal. Rittich gets a 1-year deal for $1 million. Lewis, $775,000 on a 1-year deal. And then he had the Kings trading the 24th pick to the Flyers for picks 40, 48, and 68. He said trade picks 48 and 88 to Tampa for Isaac Howard's rights. Sign him to a 2-year, $925,000 deal. Trade Deneau and Spence for Brandon Carlo. Obviously, that can't happen because Spence is gone. He said you might need to add draft capital, but a Gavrikov-Carlo second pairing would be awesome. Also talked about trading with Colorado for Charlie Coyle. Then re-signed Kempe, $9.5 million for 8 years. And he said that would be an amazing regular season roster. The only thing we would have to do at the deadline is to add a playoff style middle or bottom 6 forward and potentially a better backup goalie if Rittich, Copley, or Portillo aren't performing. Thanks again for being such an amazing advocate and voice for Kings fans. Go King, go Kings, go. That was, again, Tommy in Manhattan Beach. A lot of moving parts there, Tommy. I appreciate all the effort that went into this. He even included, I think it's a Puckpedia page where I guess you can kind of create a roster and they'll calculate the cap space for you and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, obviously Spence is out of the equation. Marner may be out of the equation. Gavrikov may be out of the equation. So we shall see. It's a fun exercise to do to try and make a lot of pieces work and do a lot of things. But it's a lot, like I said, a lot of moving parts to all your plans there. And unfortunately, Spence is gone, so that is not a possibility. And it looks like Gavrikov and Marner may be out of the equation soon as well. Gary in Court d'Alene, Idaho says, I have a trade proposal. Trevor Moore, Jordan Spence, and the Kings' first-round pick in 2025 to the rights for Bowen Byram and Buffalo's second-round pick in 2025. Sign Gavrikov, and your defense for the next 2 years is Anderson, Gavrikov, Byram, Doughty, and Edmondson Clark. This would mean that they would not have cap space for Marner, but they could re-sign Kuzmenko and extend Kempe. With more gone, this gives more ice time for Turcotte. Still cap space to sign Besser. Thanks for keeping us all informed all summer. Go Kings, go. Gary in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I would have loved to have those defensive pairings for next season. Maybe Bowen Byram is still a possibility, but it doesn't look like Gavrikhov's going to be here. And obviously, you had Spence moving anyway. So that would be filling that hole. So yeah, we'll see. I think that's actually probably a little bit too expensive for Bowen Byram. Maybe 2 players, but not the number 1 pick. But we'll see. We'll see if he's still a possibility. The Kings are going to have some holes to fill defensively. That is for sure. So thanks to all of you for your trade ideas. We've got more emails to get to. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop managing money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Taking control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, back to the emails. Brian in Los Alamitos checking in. He says, I heard Mark and Eddie discuss his draft strategy of dropping down in the draft. Call me old school, but I always thought teams wanted to move up in the draft. Is the purpose of moving down to secure additional picks in the same or later rounds? And is this only done if the acquired lower pick is within the same tier as the original higher pick? Basically, can you explain Mark and Eddie's strategy? I know it worked out last year with the selection of Greentree and George, but it still feels like a risky strategy. However, I do admit that I trust Mark Yannetti and appreciate all the time and work he puts into the draft each year. And one last thing, is there any word on who is replacing Nick Nixon? Thanks for the great week of shows, Brian in Los Alamitos. The only reason you want to move up in the draft is because there's a player there that you really want and you don't think he's going to be around when you're going to pick, and you're willing to sacrifice another asset to be able to get that pick. As far as Mark Yannetti, and I kind of explained this in a previous show, but I believe, he breaks the draft down into tiers of players. And so it's not necessary. They do have players slotted at 22, 23, 24, so on and so forth, but it's within a tier. There's like 8, 9, 10 players that are in a tier 5, and that's where you're picking. So anybody in that tier you feel is pretty much a similar type player. It may not exactly be the same guy, may not even be the same position, but someone who is for example, a middle 6 forward or a bottom pairing defenseman, that's the type of player you're going to get. And it doesn't really matter if you get him, within those 10 picks. So the strategy is, if you can, and you think those players that you like in that tier are still going to be available a little bit later, then move down 4 or 5 or 6 picks if that player you think is still going to be there, or those players in that tier are still going to be there, and you get an extra pick. And that is apparently what the Kings did this year, and they did it last year as well. So hope that maybe clears up a little bit of what the strategy is, generally speaking, for the Kings and Mark Yannetti. I have not heard anything about the replacement for Nick Nixon. If I do hear anything, I will absolutely pass that along. Jeremy in Simi Valley says he just became a fan in time for the Cups. Well, that is some good timing on your part, sir. He says, I think this has been a simmering feeling I've had, but this draft pick is just boiled over, and it's a full thought now. There is something that is just bothering me. Our strongest suit is supposedly defense, but we basically don't care about it at all and give it away every chance we get. The Brustevich pick is proof of that, not against it. We're about to let Gavrikov go for nothing. We lost Roy last season for nothing, and we don't trust Spence and would give him away for practically nothing. And now we have to draft a defenseman. Shocker. We drafted Spence in 19, and after just 2 seasons of play, we're either doing some pretty serious contract posturing stuff for an entry-level plus guy, or just basically publicly saying we don't like you. We're okay with losing you for nothing. All that development for nothing on both sides, because it's not like they don't know how to take basically a joke pick of Laferriere we have at home and put him on the first line and work his value up from nothing. Oh, but that's the guy they're going to find a way to make work and won't trade. Gotcha. So I'm all in for the team, but should someone almost go warn Bustevich, hopefully you're ready to work your butt off until 2031 so you can warm the bench for a hurt guy and still somehow get put in the doghouse. I'm honestly curious what position you think we should have drafted. You might as very well have said defense, because we're just fine with losing so many, but feels a lot better to stay forward because we've hung on and paid our supposedly best strength, and now we need to start thinking about replenishing the forward prospect pipeline that was wiped out in the PLD trade. Sorry for the length and so much for the show. Thank you so much for the show that you do. Really adds a whole other layer to watching the games and being a fan. You really found your role. And that was from Jeremy in Simi Valley. You talked about Roy and Gavrikov and the Kings giving them away for nothing. And I was an advocate of trading Matt Roy before the deadline last season, but I wouldn't have traded Gavrikov this season. I think both times the Kings were in a tough spot. Going into the playoffs, you had high hopes for some playoff success, and trading away one of your top defensemen would have been a tough message. Now, granted, maybe they could have gotten another defenseman back in return, but they were in a tough spot, and I do get that. I don't think the Kings were happy about the situation they were in, but that was the situation they were in. They decided to roll the dice, at least on Gavrikov, and it did seem like he wanted to re-sign in LA, and there were a lot of, I think, positive signs that might happen. I don't know if he changed his mind. In hindsight, it looks like that's not going to be the case, but the Kings were in a tough spot there. I don't think that they're happy or not serious about, the players they've been losing on the defensive side. I didn't get your comment about Laferriere being a joke pick. I'm not sure what that was about. I did say on an earlier show that for this draft, for the first pick, I would have drafted a defenseman because the Kings pipeline could use a top defensive prospect. We've got Liam Greentree at forward. You've got two goalies in George and Slakinski. I think the Kings need a top defensive prospect in their pool to kind of even things out. Hopefully they have found that with Bustevich. Eric in Windsor, California says, I'm a Kings fan from day one. So basically the Kings traded Jordan Spence, an NHL player, for nothing but future low-level draft picks who will add nothing for next season. I am unfortunately losing hope for improving for next season as long as Jim Hiller's here, who led one of the worst playoff coaching blunders ever. Alas, keep hope alive. Maybe we'll see Mr. Holland pull a rabbit out of his hat. And that was from Eric in Windsor, California. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Ken Holland's first move here with the Jordan Spence trade. I didn't like the return, but the picture is far from complete. I'll reserve my final judgment until after all the dust settles and we see what we have. I don't know if he needs to pull a rabbit out of his hat, but I think he does need to make some pretty solid moves to at least keep our defensive core at the same level it was a year ago. I don't know if he can make some moves to improve it from a year ago, but we'll see. Mike in Reno checks in and he says, I know you have stated honestly that advanced hockey stats is not your area of expertise. It's not mine either. However, I would like to understand some of the more advanced hockey stats than I do now. I was wondering if maybe later this summer, you or a knowledgeable guest could do a show or part of one to help fans better understand some of the more important advanced hockey stats. Not a deep dive, but more of what's on hockey database, if you know what I mean. I don't even know what Corsi means, and I hear it all the time. I just like to learn how to evaluate players more than the basic stats. I don't want to bore your listeners to death, but helping Kings fans, and myself included, becoming a bit more educated with their comments and takes certainly can't be a bad thing. You're a class act, Eddie. Thanks for the effort you put into the shows. And that was from Mike in Reno. Thank you, Mike. I think that's actually a great idea. I know our friend of the show, Russell Morgan, is into the analytics. Maybe he could be somebody that could help us out with that, or we could find somebody else to come in and talk about it. Give us the basics on it, because I'm kind of old school, I guess. I'm not really into all the advanced analytics and And I kind of know what Corsi and Fenwick is about, but it's not something I discuss much on the show because it's something I just don't know that much about. Real quick, finally, David in Las Vegas says, does Tobias Bjornfoot, former King defenseman, have 2 Stanley Cup rings? Go Kings, go. I don't know if he has any. He did skate with the Stanley Cup last season because he was one of the Florida Panthers extra players when they won it. I know for sure he does not have his name on the Stanley Cup. I think it would depend on how generous the Panthers were with giving players rings. Maybe since it was the first one they've ever had, they were probably very generous about it. So maybe he got a ring. I don't know. But he was not even one of the Panthers extra players this season. Was not with them when they won their second Stanley Cup. So I don't think Tobias Bjornfoot is telling anyone he's a 2-time Stanley Cup winner. He did get to skate with the cup. I think that was probably his big moment because he was on the extra roster for playoff time, but I'm pretty sure he does not have 2 Stanley Cup rings. All right, for you everydayers, those you listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up in our next group of shows, we will get more into the Jordan Spence trade, talk about the latest with Vladislav Gavrikov. We'll get into what GM Ken Holland had to say in his post-draft press conference, and also maybe put a little bit more of a bow on the Kings NHL Draft weekend. Tuesday, it's going to be all about free agency, the first day of free agency, and our reaction to what the Kings do or don't do. And of course, you'll all have a chance to comment on it later in the week with another fan feedback show. If you would like some extra Kings content, maybe get a first reaction to any breaking news, like I did with the Jordan Spence trade, you can send me an email, lakingsextra@gmail.com. If you want to send an email for the feedback show, that is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And if you're watching on YouTube, we love it when you comment on the show as well. Stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.